Ahoy, my friends. Welcome aboard the Afro Tales podcast. I'm your storyteller, Amon Mazingo. Join me as we explore the tales that grew from the people of Indigenous and African descent in the Americas and the Caribbean. After, come and see me, chef, who will impart upon you a recipe for the story you have just heard. So with no further ado, let us set sail on this new age of exploration.
Hankerin for a long tale. One time, when the summertime had come and the hot sun liked to burn up everything, mosquito and sandfly and gnat, always buzzing, used their mouths too much and bothered Brer Rabbit too much. He didn't have anything to brush off the pests, so he began jumping around uselessly and soon ran out of breath. So he went to scheming to see what he could do to get rid of them. He noticed Brer Bull Cow standing under a tree, chewing his cud in a satisfied way. And every time those bugs lit on him, Brer Cow switched his tail and knocked them, and they flew away and left him alone. Just then, Brer Horse came along the road, and a fly buzzed around his haunches, and he just switched his tail and killed it dead. Brer Rabbit was eating himself up with envy, vexed because he didn't have a long tail. He thought that when things like that were handed out, he should have gotten a tail like they had. It made him mad to remember how he had been obliged to cry and beg with Sister Nanny Goat just to fool her into giving him that stumpy little bit of a cottontail he had now. There isn't any way in the world to take away the shame of having something that is nothing at all, like his stub of a tail. Fly and flea just buzzing around, laughing at that poor excuse for a switch. A long tail would also have made a fine figure of a fellow. But there wasn't any way to go back to those times. The question he faced was how he was to get a sizable tail right now. He went home and he thought about it and thought about it until suddenly he hatched out a plan. It was right bodacious a plan too. But then Brer Rabbit is a right bodacious creature. There isn't anything so outrageous that he won't try to do at least one time. And Brer Rabbit put on his store clothes with his blue breeches and his yellow shoes, all fine. And he cocked his hat and he took the path that went to heaven to ask God if he wouldn't be so kind as to give him a long tail like those other creatures have. It wasn't easy for Brer Rabbit to find the way because everybody he asked seemed to have a different notion about how to get there. Brer Rabbit listened to everyone and paid no attention to most of them, but he kept a steady head about him and kept pushing on. And by, it seemed as if the narrow path kind of rambled in front of him. And he went on and on until at last he was right at the front gate of heaven and at the head of the long avenue of the beautiful city. He pushed in and walked along the Grand Boulevard. And at last there he was, right in front of the big house. That house sure is big. Brer Rabbit had to walk a mile or more around the veranda to the back porch plaza. When he got there, he took off his hat and he put it on the step. He took his bandana and dusted his yellow shoes and wiped his forehead and threw the rag into his hat. Then he reached over and knocked on the floor of the porch at the back door. Sort of like that. His heart almost failed him, but nothing happened. He waited a little while. Then he rapped again. Maybe God isn't in. But no fresh tracks led away from the house. He decided to rap again, a little louder this time. And this time, God hollered out of the house in a great big voice. "Who is there?" Brer Rabbit was really scared. He said in a kind of timid whisper, Well, it's me, sir." God eyeballed him and said, "Who is me?" "Well, just me, Brer Rabbit, sir." And God asked mighty severely, "What do you want, Brer Rabbit?" "Just a little something, sir. Won't take you barely a minute to do it." "What sort of business are you up to now?" God said. "Sit down and I'll be out right away." Brer Rabbit sat down on the step, and after a long time, while he mostly wished he had never come, God finally came out. The first look Brer Rabbit had of God, he was so scared that he almost took off and ran away. But when he thought about how badly he wanted that long tail, he held his ground. He jumped off the step and displayed his best manners, pulling his forelock and scraping the gravel with his feet. "Now, Brer Rabbit," God said, sort of gruffly, "what is the thing that you want so badly that you have gotten bold enough to come up here like this?" Brer Rabbit pulled his forelock again and answered, "Massa, this weather is so hard on us poor creatures, I don't see how we survive. Looks like Brer Mockingbird the only one that can enjoy himself, and he has to go away out to the top of the tree in the woods before he can jump around and sing the way he does. We who have to stay on the ground have Satan's own time. Every sort of devilish biting and stinging and troubling thing just trying to stay alive, and we have to contend with it. The gnats and the greenhead flies and the sand flies and the red bugs and the ticks and the chiggers and all kinds of varmints like that bother us from first day clean to dark. They work from can to can't, and they work faithfully. And when the darkness comes, they leave off. The mosquitoes and the gall nippers join hands and take their place and suck our blood and annoy us until the first day brings its light. Even then, Master, some creatures make out better than the rest of us because they have a real tail, not just a leftover stump like Sister Nanny gave me. I noticed that nice tail Brother Bull Cow and Brother Horse were giving. When a fly bother them, all they have to do is wave their tails in the air, and the flies and mosquitoes are scared if they don't fly off. Ping! That long tail cracks down, and they are dead. Now, sir?" But Rabbit got mighty bold and brash, but his voice came out sweet as molasses. I just come here to ask you to do something for me, Master, please, sir. If you could be so kind as to give me a long tail so that I can brush away these pesky critters too? God cast his eyes down at Brer Rabbit and squinched up his forehead and looked him over. Then he puckered his mouth like he had been biting a green persimmon, and he said, "You are made like you are made. You have been contrary about the tail from the first day. Sister Nanny Goat did just as I told her, and she was kind to give you any tail at all. Even with all the blessings you already have, you come here to me to get a tail like the very best creatures have? You are mighty little to have a long tail. Brer Horse and Brer Bull Cow are big and stand high off the ground, but your belly mostly drags in the dust. You can jump around in the grass and keep those flies off. That's what I've been doing, sir. But it's just wears me out." God looked at him closely. "You just want to be high fashion, don't you?" "Who, sir? Why do I have to think about fashion, sir? I'm thankful for what I've got. The flies are the only thing that brought me here." But Brer Rabbit was so scared he couldn't keep from trembling just a little bit. God kind of smiled at him and then sort of squinched up his face. "Well, you are smart enough to get here, and that is more than most, so I reckon I'll set a task to see just how smart you are. That will keep you from bothering me for a while. And if you do it, I might give you a long tail." With that, he turned around and went into the house. He came right back out again with something in his hand. Brer Rabbit jumped up from where he had been sitting and became polite again. God gave him a crocus bag and said, "Take this bag and bring it back to me full of blackbirds." Poor Brer Rabbit cried out at that, but God looked sour at him, cocking his eye, and Brer Rabbit shut up. Then God gave him a hammer and said, "Knock out Brer Alligator's eye teeth with this hammer and fetch them to me." This time, Brer Rabbit was so upset that he could only grunt. Last, God took a little calabash and said, "This you must fill with Brer Deer's eye water." You understand? Now, you get away from here. Don't come back bothering me until you have done the whole lot. Then he turned on his heels and went back into the house and slammed the door. Brer Rabbit felt so cut down to size that he could scarcely pick up his hat and put it on his head and go home. His heart was heavy and he dragged his feet along the ground. He walked along and he thought. He shook his head and he thought. How could he catch blackbirds by the sackful? He wasn't a hawk. Why would anyone with good sense go anywhere near Brer Alligator's mouth? So how could he knock out his teeth with a hammer? And get in Brer Deer's tears? Brer Deer is so foolish and skittery. If you just ask him about anything, he gets scared and runs off. God fixed it so that it's mighty hard to get a long tail. It didn't look like he was ever going to get his. Now, you know Brer Rabbit is little, but he is quick as a whip. and he worked his mind day and night on how to get a sack full of blackberries. At last, he figured out a scheme. During the fall, the white folks burned off the rice field bank, where the grass grows all summer and stands heavy. The fire just goes along, and the smoke rolls along ahead of it. And then all of the birds living in the grass get foolish about the smoke and fly about like crazy. So, when they started that year, Brer Rabbit went down on the bank and got a big clump of grass. And when the fire came that way and the heavy smoke reached them, the birds flew around madly, lighting on one bush and then another, just running away. At last, they came down right in front of Brer Rabbit's clump of grass. He jumped out and caught a bird and put it in the sack. And he jumped around again and caught some more. The birds were so slippery, he got his sack full at last. And he was very proud. Next, he began to think about the problem of Brer Alligator's teeth. One fine day, he got his fiddle and went down to the rice field by the river. Now, Brer Rabbit worked the fiddle in his own devilish way at all the dances and picnics in the country and made people lose their religion. And a whole lot of people had been turned out of their churches because they had crossed their feet to his dancing tune. Because when Brer Rabbit played, there ain't any feet around that can take any notice whether they are crossed or not. Now, this day, Brer Rabbit sat down on a stump and started to play and sing and pat his foot. And when he did that, something began to move, because he knew no animal could resist that music, especially Brer Alligator. Brer Alligator, who was way down at the bottom of the river, yelled at him and came to the top of the water, poked his eyes out, and looked about to see who it was playing like that. But Brer Rabbit didn't pay any attention to him. He sang and he played and he patted his foot. Right away, the music started to pull Brer Alligator out of the water, and he swam over to the bank. Still, Brer Rabbit didn't pay any attention to him. He went on singing and playing and patting his foot just like no one was around. Brer Alligator crawled out on the edge of the marsh and then climbed right up on the bank and sat down by Brer Rabbit. He popped his eyes up at him and listened. Brer Rabbit stopped at last. Brer Alligator praised him to the sky for his singing and fiddling. Then he asked Brer Rabbit, "Can you teach me how to play like that? I sure would like to play and sing like that. Yes, sir." Brer Rabbit made like he was thinking a little while and then said to him, "Can't say about the singing, because it depends on how a man's mouth is made and if you can learn to sing or not." "Look at my mouth, Brer Rabbit. Tell me if it's right." Brer Rabbit pretended like he didn't care. He told him it was hard to teach anyone to sing anyway. "Do it, Rabbit," he begged him. But Brer Rabbit pretended like he hadn't heard him. He just kind of scratched his head and started to hum a tune. Brer Rabbit, man, you got to stop just that for a minute. Look and see if I have the kind of mouth that you can teach how to sing. Brer Alligator kept on begging. Brer Rabbit just yawned and stretched himself and looked down at Brer Alligator, shaking his head and making clucking sounds. All right, then, maybe I can. But you have to listen to me close now and do just as I say. Sure, Brer Rabbit. Anything you say. Then shut your eyes tight. I'll tell you when to open them again. Brer Alligator shut them. Open your mouth wide, real wide, and hold it that way. And Brer Alligator did just as he was told. Brer Rabbit grabbed a little light wood knife and he jammed it into Brer Alligator's jaws to keep them wide open, clear way back by the corners of Alligator's mouth, so he couldn't shut it down. And he said, bite down on that a minute and hold still. Then he whipped out that little hammer that God had given him and crack, knocked out both of Brer Alligator's eye teeth. And then, just as quickly, he ran off with him. Brer Alligator hollered and yelled and thrashed around looking for Brer Rabbit. But Brer Rabbit didn't pay any attention to him. He just scampered on home. And every time he thought about Brer Alligator's jaws might have scrunched down on him, he had to wiggle to feel if he was all there. Brer Rabbit was mighty satisfied with himself then. Yes, sir, he was. The last thing Brer Rabbit had to do was to get that calabash full of Brer Deer's eye water, and then he would have all the tasks done. But he knew that getting the eye water would be the hardest task of all. He could hardly sleep again because he was so bothered by the problem. He couldn't think of anything except to ask Brer Deer directly to help him. But that wasn't any use because Brer Deer knew Brer Rabbit too well and would figure out that he was going to play some kind of trick on him. Brer Deer would take off so fast when he saw Brer Rabbit that no one would even be able to catch up with him to argue the point. The problem got so hard, Brer Rabbit almost gave up the whole thing. But then he saw Brer Horse and Brer Bull with their nice long tails switching and swinging, and it reminded him of how fine he would look walking down the big road if he just had one of those long tails. He could sure sashay along the road and shake that tail about and just look so handsome. So he began to scratch his head again and to think about some more. Man, he is a schemer, that Brer Rabbit. And finally, he got a notion. Brer Deer lived way down deep in the woods. A long time ago, he used to live in the settlement. He and Brer Dog even planted land together. But Brer Deer, or one of the family, had a fight with Brer Dog. And what with one thing or another, it got to be such a goings on that Brer Dog and his family made Brer Deer and his family run away every time they got a chance. That's what made Brer Deer begin a little place way off by himself. Poor Brer Deer was scared of nearly all the animals because of that experience. In fact, he was the most frightened creature in the woods. Brer Rabbit counted on that, and he went deep into the woods till he came to the clearing where Brer Deer had his house. And he found Brer Deer lying down in the hot sun in his yard. Brer Rabbit passed the time of the day with them. They talked a little bit about crops and weather, and who had been turned out of church, and who had gotten killed at the picnic and such things. At last, Brer Rabbit said, "Brer Deer, you know I am your friend, right?" Sure, Brer Rabbit. I know that well. You know, I always do stick up for you, right? Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Very well, then. I have to inform you that they have been throwing your name about so much in the settlement that I had to come and tell you about it. What did they say? They said that you are no good at jumping any longer. That since the nanny goat takes the prize for jumping nowadays. Now, Brer Rabbit, you could, who could say that? Why? I can jump 3 times higher than that no account little thing. Brer Dog said you couldn't. I told him that just wasn't so. And I came here to give you a chance to show me how you can still jump higher than anyone. Now, I saw Sister Nanny go jump a bush almost as high as that one over there. And she could jump it good, too. Can you jump that high? Brer Deer sucked his teeth and shook his head and just kind of smiled and said, Man, when I was a little fella, before I could ever walk, I could jump bushes like that one. Well, then, why don't you go on? That bush goes awful high up in the air for anyone to jump. But if you can make it, I would sure like to see so I could pass the word along the street to Brer Dog. Brer Deer got up and he ran down his yard and then came back over the bush just high and fine and graceful. Brer Rabbit looked astonished. He whistled. He slapped his leg, praising Brer Deer for how high and far he could jump. Isn't that isn't anything, said Brer Deer. And he jumped over another bush, a little higher, just to show what he could do. Brer Rabbit loudly sang out his praises. Brer Dog is sure going to have a shut his line out now when I carry the tale up to everyone about how fine you jump. Man, you look nice doing that. I reckon you would even jump that big bush yonder. And Brer Deer took that one as well. So Brer Rabbit pointed to high and higher bushes till at last he fixed on one that wasn't a bush. It was more like a young tree, and it had a heavy fork and was all tangled up with jasmine and catbrier and snelox and supplejack and other kinds of vines. When he looked at the tree with the jasmine, Brer Deer sort of hesitated. But Brer Rabbit encouraged him with so much praise he reared back and jumped in. He leaped very high in the air, but he didn't quite make it. He landed slam bang right in the middle in the big fork. The jump knocked the breath out of him. When he twisted around to get out, he got so tangled up in the jack twine and briar that it got harder to move. He hollered for Brer Rabbit to come help him. Brer Rabbit made sure that he was caught fast and said, Man, I can't help you. You're too heavy, and you might fall on me and bust my back. But I'll go right away to the settlement to find someone to help get you out. With that, he ran down the path until he was out of sight. And then he threw himself on the ground and he rolled and cackled and laughed at the way he had fooled Brer Deer. And the way he was going to get his way now. Brer Rabbit laughed till he was crying. And then he got up off the ground and pulled his handkerchief out of his pocket and ran back to Brer Deer, wailing and sobbing. Brer Deer, you better get out of that bush now. Don't waste a minute because Brer Dog. And he made out like he couldn't speak. He was crying so. What's the matter, Brer Rabbit? Brer Deer was so scared that his voice was trembling. You better come out right now because Brer Dog and his whole family are right behind me. They're going to kill you and eat you if you stay in the bush. When I got close to the settlement, I saw him running down the path coming this way. Brer Deer shook and kicked himself. He pulled and pushed, but all he did was tangle himself more tightly in the jacktwine. Get out of that bush, Brer Deer. Get out of that bush before they get here and kill you right in front of my eyes. And Brer Rabbit bowed his head and mopped his eyes with his handkerchief. Then Brer Deer bursted out crying. He struggled and cried, and then he struggled, and then he cried some more. And all the time, Brer Rabbit made out as if he was helping him, but all he was doing was tangling the vine around Brer Deer's foot. Then he held out that little calabash that God had given him and caught every drop of that eye water which ran out of Brer Deer's eyes. Every time Brer Deer looked like he might let up, Brer Rabbit screeched out, "Oh, poor Brer Deer! You are going to be caught today!" And Brer Deer would bawl out some more. But even so, the calabash wasn't quite full yet. So Rabbit called out, "I see him getting closer, Brer Deer. Howling for your meat. Hurry, Brer Deer, and get loose, or no one can save you." Brer Deer struggled the best he could, but he couldn't move himself, and he went on crying. And so with all of that, Brer Rabbit filled the calabash with eye water. Then he picked up the little calabash, wiped his own eyes, and didn't say anything else. He just walked away and left Brer Deer up high in that tree fort. Now that Brer Rabbit was all done with the task God had given him, he didn't waste any time. He went home, put on his store clothes, and picked up all 3 things that God asked for. He took the path to God's house, and all the way he swaggered. Now, when he got there, this time, he didn't go to any back door. No, sir. He walked right up to the front door, knocked bold and loud. God was in the house, and he hollered, "Who's that there?" And Brer Rabbit answered, "It's me, sir, Brer Rabbit." "What?" God's voice sounded kind of curious. "You're back already, are you? You haven't done all the tasks that I set for you to do." "Yes, sir." "You mean to tell me that you got all those things I told you to get?" "Yes, sir. They're all right here, sir." "Take care with your foolishness, Brer Rabbit. You don't lie to me." "No, sir. I have them all here, sir." God didn't make any sound for a while. But after such a length of time he came out the door. But Rabbit kind of puffed himself up. He felt so pleased with himself that he was just grinning all over his face. Then he noticed that God looked vexed, and Brer Rabbit straightened up his face, put down the sack of blackberries, then reached down in his side pocket and pulled out a little handkerchief and unwrapped Brer Alligator's 2 eye teeth and handed them to God. There they were for sure, and the blood was still on. And he hunted in his coattail pocket and pulled out the calabash full of Brer Deer's eye water. God tasted it, and he smelled it, and then he said, "You are smart, ain't you, Brer Rabbit? Very well then." He pointed to a loblolly pine tree out in the yard. "You go and sit yourself under that pine tree till I can fix you up." And he turned around and went back into the house and slammed the door after him. Bam! Now, Brer Rabbit went and did as he was told and sat down under that tree. But he didn't like the way God had slammed the door at all. And he didn't like the way God had talked to him. And he noticed that God's eyes showed red like fire when he looked at that pine tree. And Brer Rabbit couldn't rest easy because he was getting more and more scared. He scuffled around on his haunches, little bit by little bit, till he got to the other side of the tree trunk from the big house and sneaked away real quietly, keeping the tree between him and the house, till he got away over to the corner of the yard where he could hide himself under a heavy sucker bush. Well, sir, he was hardly in that sucker bush before blam, 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 out of the clear sky that didn't have so much as a cloud in it came the biggest thunder and lightning bolt that ever was seen. Wow! It just crashed down on that loblolly where Brer Rabbit had been. And the next minute, where that pine tree stood, there wasn't anything except a pile of kindling, and that was on fire. Brer Rabbit didn't stop for anything. He took his feet in his hands and hit the avenue to the big gate, and he screamed. About that time, God in the big house looked out the window and saw a little something just running lickety-split down the avenue. And he looked close, and sure enough, it was Brer Rabbit. He leaned out the window and put his 2 hands to his mouth and hollered, "Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. You think you're so smart, eh? You so dressed smart? Well, get your long tail yourself." The end. Wow. So this is a great story, and I haven't done a Brer Rabbit story in quite a while. This one comes from African American Folktales, Stories from Black Traditions in the New World, selected and edited by Roger D. Abrahams. And if you've been listening long enough, you know this is one of the books that started the podcast. And when you get new books, you start to go away from the first ones. I haven't finished the stories out of this book yet. There are a lot more that I have yet to get to. And they're just amazing stories. This one, it's long. If I cut into 2, then okay, you know what to expect. But this one is a long one, right? But it's a good one. And it's your traditional Brer Rabbit story. But if you've been listening, if you caught it, the eagle ear listener, whatever the word is, the real good listener is going to catch that the situation is very similar to another trickster and how they got their stories, Anansi, and how he became the owner of all stories, going to God saying he wanted the stories, and God told him, Niame told him that he needed to get 3 things, felt that they were impossible things to get, and he got them, and he became the owner of stories. I like the twist in this story, though. Very similar. He wants a tail. For similar reasons, he wants it so he could have it, right? And he goes to God and says, hey, I want a long tail. And God kind of already knows what he's trying to do. Oh, you just want to look good. It ain't no real reason. You just want to look good, you know? And he's like, nah, I just want the tail, you know? And so he goes out, completes all the tasks. I think it's real messed up that he left Brer Deer stuck, because I want to know what happened to Brer Deer so bad, but you know, you'll never know. But I think that's sad. The blackbirds, I don't know what was going on with them. Like, they didn't even have anything to say in the story. You know, they was just like, all right, this is the quest that, you know, it shows where it's like, we gotta do one quick quest so you kind of see that we're on a quest, and that's it. It was like a little, they felt more like a side quest than anything. But I understand the Brer Alligator, you know, situation. There's gonna be other Brer Rabbit and alligator stories. I actually thought about doing another one before I did this one, so just know another one is coming. And it's a pourquoi story, or pourquoi story, a whitetail. But the way, you know, I understand how he got that. The alligator reminded me of the crocodile from Princess and the Frog. If you watch the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Like, he just wanted to sing, he wanted to party, you know? Like, there's so much, like, this one story I'm sorry. You know, I love these stories. You know I do. But, the message. What was the message from this folktale? Be happy with what you got. Be happy with the way God blessed you. And I know that statement is going to rub a lot of people wrong. And because of the climate and the world we live in, and becoming more, or at least trying to become more accepting of people who don't feel they are who they were born to be. You know what I mean? And that's fine, you know. I'm just telling you what this story, I think, is trying to say. Be happy with what you do have. And make it work for you. But I know that's going to rub some people wrong, and I apologize for that. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying what the moral of the story probably is. If you got a different moral, please contact me. Let me know. I don't mind listening to what you got. Okay? But the ending, and God was like, you know what? Because this dude had to do some wrong things to get this stuff. I'm not about to bless you, baby. I'm not about to bless you. I can't do it for you. You know? And if you so smart, you were smart enough to get all of this stuff, be smart enough to get yourself a long tail then. How about that? Do it yourself. You know, because Brer Rabbit wasn't right in what he did. You know, knocking teeth out and getting people stuck and kidnapping birds. Like, that ain't right. Really? But, yeah. And in this particular story, one last thing I want to mention. I tried to give God an ambiguous voice, because in the time and when these type of stories were written, we know Brer Rabbit is a representation of the enslaved Africans here in America. And the big house, like they said in the book, is the plantation house. And God would be the plantation master. So I tried to give him a little more of an ambiguous, not really a voice that seemed to be black or white, Asian or anything. I tried to give him just a more, generic voice. I hope that worked for you guys. If not, let me know. But it is coming from North Carolina. This story is coming from North Carolina, and we understand the situations out there for those that were enslaved back then, and it wasn't a good time. But North Carolina is not known for being one of the more relaxed. That's hard to say. When you do your ancestry, you'll find out it's not known for being one of the more relaxed in their views of slavery. Okay, but that's all I got for you guys today. Go see Chef. He should have a wonderful recipe from North Carolina. And until next time, as always, have a blessed day.
Welcome, my friends, to the galley. I am your chef, and today we have a wonderful recipe inspired by the story you have just heard. Today, we will be creating Cheerwine BBQ Chicken. Now, what will you need for this delectably tasty recipe? For the sauce, 1 tablespoon butter, 1 teaspoon minced garlic, 1 cup ketchup, 1 cup cherry wine, 3 tablespoons Worcestershire sauce, 1/4 teaspoon ground cayenne pepper, 1/2 teaspoon ground black pepper, 1 teaspoon dried mustard, and 2 tablespoons white distilled vinegar. Now, the chicken: 1 tablespoon dried thyme, 1 tablespoon dried oregano, 1 tablespoon paprika, 1 teaspoon ground cumin, 1 teaspoon onion powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 a teaspoon of pepper, 12 skin on bone in chicken thighs, about 4 pounds. Now, how do we put this together? Easy. For the sauce, melt the butter in a large saucepan over medium heat. Add the minced garlic and cook for 30 seconds. Stir in remaining ingredients. Bring to a boil. Reduce the heat and simmer until the sauce is slightly thickened. About 30 minutes should do. Use soon or cool, cover and refrigerate for up to 1 week. Now, for the chicken. Stir together the thyme, oregano, paprika, cumin, onion, salt, and pepper. Pat the chicken dry and then coat with the seasoning mix. Place the chicken in a zip-top plastic freezer bag. Seal and refrigerate for 4 hours. Now, preheat the grill to 350 degrees to 400 degrees. medium-high heat. If using charcoal and embers, should be covered in gray ash with glowing centers. Oil the grill grate generously. Place the chicken skin side down on the hot grate. Cook until the skin browns. About 8 minutes should do. Turn the chicken over and continue grilling until an instant thermometer inserted into the thickest portion registers 170 degrees. About 5 to 8 minutes longer. Transfer 1 cup of the barbecue sauce into a small dish, reserving the rest. Brush the skin side of the chicken with the sauce from the dish. Turn the skin side down and cook 2 minutes. Brush chicken with more sauce. Turn the skin side up and grill 2 minutes. Arrange the chicken on a platter, tint loosely with foil, and let rest for 5 minutes. Discard any sauce in a small bowl because it has come in contact with raw chicken and would be unsafe to eat and cooked. And that's it, my friends. Now, go make this recipe yours. And until I have another wonderful recipe for you, remember Brer Rabbit's actions. And until next time, my friends, as always, enjoy.
Thank you, my friends, for coming on this voyage. Thanks to Art by Chalet for the logo, episode, and shirt designs. You can get t-shirts and other items on tpublic.com. You can contact me on all socials at AfroTalesCast. That's AfroTales Cast. And email me at AfroTalesCast@gmail.com. You may also become a benefactor by simply sharing with any and everyone, giving a thumbs up, a 5-star rating and review in your podcast app of choice, or simply donating on Patreon or Ko-fi.com. That's KO-FI.com. So until we meet again, may your winds be fair and your seas follow.